This semester we are delighted to host this exhibit entitled Metropoli, Visionary Architecture from Futurism to Rationalism, here at Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò. It features pieces coming from the Fondazione Massimo and Sonia Cirulli in Bologna, one of the richest collections of artifacts and documents from the early 20th century. And our exhibit concentrates on the idea of city, on the idea of public spaces, on the idea of architecture between these two fundamental trends in Italian intellectual history, Futurism and Rationalism.
The selection criterion involved thinking about how the Futurists and subsequently rationalist architects imagined the city to perhaps develop under modernity.
During the 20th century, much of Italy was an agrarian economy dominated by the presence of small villages, and even the Italian cities, being so ancient, in many ways resisted the novelty of industrial buildings, new architecture, and new housing developments.
And that lack of real urban mass and industrial advancement is in great part what motivated the futurist imaginations of future cityscapes, future buildings.
For the Futurists, a lot of this potential new architecture remained in the realm of imagination, remained a visionary utopia. It was something that they had in mind from looking at postcards, for instance, of the skyline of new cities in the United States, but nothing that really found concrete realization in the territory of Italy. Things changed in the 1920s and 30s when the political forces of Italy changed, and fascism had a program of complete reconfiguration of Italian society, which also meant a reconfiguration of city spaces, of urban spaces, of demographics. Of course, the ideology of the regime at times conflicted with the most avant-garde architectural languages. The types of buildings that ended up being built under the fascist regime are buildings that compromise between modernist languages as well as classicizing and very rhetorical architectural visions.
From the start, Futurism didn't want to occupy itself just with literature or with painting. It was the first comprehensive avant-garde of the 20th century. So the Futurists wanted to redo not just what we consider the fine or high arts, but everything from the spoon to the skyscraper. The Futurists anticipated in many ways what we would now call design culture, whereby every facet of material modern life would be reinterpreted and reconfigured in the image of Futurism. So the city is fundamental to Futurism, not just in its imaginings of future architectural constructions, but as a kind of approach to modernity.
This exhibition is very interesting today because while the concerns of contemporary architects might be different from the one at the turn of the 20th century, some of the visions and the utopian character of the contemporary architecture that we see can be traced back to that particular moment in history. The ideas of transportation were very different, but the presence of trains and airplanes was part of that vision of architecture, and it still is something that is important today. Some of these futurist designs might actually provide inspiration for different forms of urban mobility. At the same time, there is a cautionary tale to be explored here because we are looking at an architecture that provided utopian and escapist views, but ended up seeing some of its only few realizations in the context of a totalitarian regime. So as we plan future buildings, we should do so very carefully, as sometimes the built environment can be a physical manifestation of political ideologies.